Aaron's death. Moses wanted to inform his brother of his impending death, but did not know how to go about it. After a while he said to him, "Aaron, has God given any news into your keeping?" "Yes," replied Aaron. "What?" asked Moses. "The altar and the table on which sits the showbread he has put into my charge." Moses: "It may be that he will now demand back from you all that he has given into your keeping." Aaron: "Why do you say that?" Moses: "Has he not entrusted a light to you?" Aaron: "Not only one light, but all 7 on the candlestick that now burns in the sanctuary." Moses had, of course, intended to call Aaron's attention to his soul, the light of the Lord, which God had given into his keeping and which he now demanded back. As Aaron, in his simplicity, did not notice the allusion, Moses did not go into further particulars, but remarked to Aaron, "God has, with justice, called you an innocent and simple-hearted man." While they were conversing, a cave opened up before them. Moses requested his brother to enter it, and Aaron instantly acquiesced. Moses was now in a sad predicament, for, to follow God's command, he had to strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar, but he did not know how to approach the subject. He finally said to Aaron, "My brother Aaron, it is not proper to enter the cave into which we now want to descend dressed in the priestly garments, for they might become unclean. The cave is very beautiful, and it is therefore possible that there are old graves in it." Aaron replied, "You are right." Moses then stripped his brother of his priestly garments and put them on his son, Eleazar. As it would have been improper if Aaron had been buried naked, God brought about a miracle, that as soon as Moses took off one of Aaron's garments, a corresponding celestial garment was spread over Aaron. And when Moses had stripped him of all his priestly garments, he found himself arrayed in 8 celestial garments. A second miracle came to pass in the stripping of Aaron's garments, for Moses was unable to take off the undermost garments before the outer. This was done in order to satisfy the law that a priest may never use their outer garments as undergarments, a thing Eleazar would have had to do had Moses stripped off Aaron's outer garments first and with these invested his son. After Eleazar had put on the priest's garments, Moses and Aaron said to him, "Wait for us here until we return out of the cave," and both entered it. At the entrance they beheld a couch, a table prepared, and a candle lighted, while ministering angels surrounded the couch. Aaron then said to Moses, "How long, my brother, will you conceal the commission God has entrusted to you? You know that he himself, when he addressed you for the first time, declared of me, 'When Aaron sees you, he will be glad in his heart.' Why then do you conceal the commission God has entrusted to you? Even if it referred to my death, I should take it on myself with a cheerful countenance." Moses replied, "As you yourself speak of death, I will acknowledge that God's words to me do concern your death, but I was afraid to make it known to you. But look now, your death is not as that of other creatures of flesh and blood. And not only is your death a remarkable one, but look, the ministering angels have come to stand by you in your parting hour." When he spoke of the remarkable death that awaited Aaron, Moses meant to allude to the fact that Aaron, like his sister Miriam and later Moses, was to die not through the angel of death, but by a kiss from God. Aaron, however, said, "O my brother Moses, why did you not make this communication to me in the presence of my mother, my wife, and my children?" Moses did not instantly reply to this question, but tried to speak words of comfort and encouragement, saying, "Do you not know, my brother, that for 40 years you deserved to meet your death when you fashioned the golden calf? But then I stood before the Lord in prayer and exhortation, and saved you from death. And now I pray that my death will be as yours, for when you die, I will bury you. But when I die, I shall have no brother to bury me. When you die, your sons will inherit your position, but when I die, strangers will inherit my place." With these and similar words, Moses encouraged his brother until he finally looked forward to his end with equanimity. Aaron lay down on the couch, and God received his soul. Moses then left the cave, which immediately vanished, so that no one might know or understand how it had happened. When Eleazar saw Moses return alone, he said to him, "O my teacher, where is my father?" Moses replied, "He has entered paradise." Then both descended from the mountain into the camp. When the people saw Moses and Eleazar return without Aaron, they were not at all in the mood to believe the news of Aaron's death. They could not understand that a man who had overcome the angel of death was now overcome by him. 3 opinions were then formed among the people concerning Aaron's absence. Some declared that Moses had killed Aaron because he was jealous of his popularity. Some thought Eleazar had killed his father to become his successor as high priest. And there was also some who declared that he had been removed from earth and taken to heaven. Satan had so incited the people against Moses and Eleazar that they wanted to stone them. Moses then prayed to God, saying, "Deliver me and Eleazar from this unmerited suspicion, and also show the people Aaron's casket, that they might not think he is still alive, for in their boundless admiration for Aaron, they may even make a god of him." God then said to the angels, "Lift up on high the casket on which lies Aaron my friend, so that Israel may know that he is dead, and they may not lay hands on Moses and Eleazar." The angels did as they were told, and Israel then saw Aaron's casket floating in the air, while God before it and the angels behind intoned a funeral song for Aaron. God lamented in the words, "He entered into peace. They rest in their beds, each one that walks in uprightness." Then the angels said, "The law of truth was in his mouth, and injustice was not found on his lips. He walked in peace and uprightness, and turned many away from iniquity." The general grieving for Aaron. When Israel beheld the funeral prepared in honor of Aaron by God and the angels, they also prepared a funeral ceremony of 30 days, in which all the people, men and women, adults and children, took part. The universal mourning had its foundation not only in Israel's emulation of the divine mourning and of the ceremonies arranged by Moses and Eleazar, or in their wish to show their reverence for the deceased high priest, but first and foremost in the truth that the people deeply loved Aaron and deeply felt his death. They grieved for him even more than they did later for Moses. For Moses, only a part of the people shed tears, but for Aaron, everyone. Moses, as a judge, was obliged to mete out justice to the guilty, so that he had enemies among the people, men who could not forget that he had pronounced them guilty in court. Moses, furthermore, was sometimes severe with Israel when he held up to them their sins, but never Aaron. The latter loved peace and pursued peace, loved men and brought them near to the Torah. In his humility, he did not consider his dignity diminished by offering greetings first even to the lowliest. He did not even fail to offer his greeting when he was certain that the man before him was wicked and godless. The lament of the angels for Aaron, as one who did turn away many from iniquity, was therefore well justified. This kindliness of his led many a sinner to reform, who at the moment when he was about to commit a sin, thought to himself, "How shall I be able to look Aaron in the face? I, to whom Aaron was so kind, now blush to do evil." Aaron recognized his special task as that of a peacemaker. If he discovered that 2 men had a falling out, he hurried first to the one, then to the other, saying to each, "My son, do you not know what the one you have quarreled with is doing? He beats at his heart, rends his garment in grief, and says, 'Woe is me! How can I ever again lift up my eyes and look on my companion, against whom I have acted so?'" Aaron would speak to each separately until both the former enemies would mutually forgive each other, and as soon as they were again face to face, salute each other as friends. If Aaron heard that a husband and wife lived in discord, he would hurry to the husband, saying, "I come to you because I hear that you and your wife live in discord. Therefore you must divorce her. Keep in mind, however, that if you should, in place of your present wife, marry another, it is very questionable if your second wife will be as good as the first. For at your first quarrel she will throw up to you that you are a quarrelsome man, as was shown by your divorce from your first wife. Many thousands of unions were saved from impending failure by the efforts and urgings of Aaron, and the sons born to the couples brought together anew usually received Aaron's name, owing as they did their existence to his intercession. Not less than 80,000 youths bearing his name took part in the mourning for Aaron. When Moses beheld the deep-felt sorrow of the heavenly beings and of men for Aaron, he burst into passionate weeping and said, "Woe is me! I am now left all alone." When Miriam died, no one came to show her the last marks of honor, and only I, Aaron, and his sons stood about her casket, wept for her, mourned for her, and buried her. At Aaron's death, I and his sons were present at his casket to show him the last marks of honor. But alas, how shall I fare? Who will be present at my death? I have neither father nor mother, neither brother nor sister. Who will then weep for me? God, however, said to him, "Be not afraid, Moses. I myself shall bear you amid great splendor, and just as the cave in which Aaron lied has vanished, that no one may know that spot, so too shall no mortal know your burial place. As the angel of death had no power over Aaron, who died by the kiss, so shall the angel of death have no power over you, and you shall die by the kiss." Moses grew calm at these words, knowing at last that he had his place among the blessed pious. Blessed are they, for not only does God in person gather them to him, but as soon as they are dead, the angels go joyously to meet them, and with beaming faces go to greet them, saying, "Enter into peace." The false friends. When Moses and Eleazar returned from the mountain without Aaron, Israel said to Moses, "We shall not release you from this spot until you show us Aaron, dead or alive." Moses prayed to God, and he opened the cave, and all Israel saw within it Aaron, lying dead on a casket. They instantly felt what they had lost in Aaron, for when they turned to look at the camp, they saw that the clouds of glory that had covered the site of the camp during their 40 years' march had vanished. They perceived, therefore, that God had sent these clouds for Aaron's sake only, and hence, with Aaron's death, had caused them to vanish. Those among Israel who had been born in the desert, having now, because of the absence of the clouds of glory, for the first time beheld the sun and moon, wanted to fall down before them and worship them. But God said to them, "Have I not commanded you in my Torah? Take care lest you lift up your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the hosts of heaven, that you are not drawn away and worship them. For it is God that led you out of the furnace of Egypt, that you might be the people of his inheritance." The disappearance of the clouds of glory inspired Israel with terror, for now they were unaided against the attacks of enemies, where before none had been able to enter into the camp while the clouds covered them. This fear was not, indeed, ungrounded, for hardly did Amalek learn that Aaron was dead and that the clouds of glory had vanished when he at once set about harassing Israel. Amalek acted in accordance with the counsel that his grandfather Esau had given him, for his words to his grandson had been, "In spite of all my pains, I did not succeed in killing Jacob. Therefore, avenge me on his descendants." "But how," said Amalek, "shall I be able to compete with Israel?" Esau answered, "Look well, and as soon as you see Israel stumble, leap on them." Amalek looked on this legacy as the guiding star of his actions. When Israel trespassed, saying with little faith, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Amalek instantly appeared. Hardly had Israel been tempted by its spies to exclaim, "Let us make a captain and return to Egypt," when Amalek came on the scene to battle with Israel. In latter times also Amalek followed this policy, and when Nebuchadnezzar moved to Jerusalem in order to destroy it, Amalek took up his position 1 mile away from the holy city, saying, "If Israel should conquer, I will declare that I have come to assist them. But should Nebuchadnezzar be victorious, then I shall cut off the flight of the fleeing Israelites." His hopes were realized, for Nebuchadnezzar was victorious, and standing at the crossway, he cut down the fleeing Israelites, and added insult to injury by hurling invectives against God and the people, ridiculing them. So, after Aaron's death, when Amalek no longer considered Israel dangerous, since the clouds had disappeared, he instantly set about making war. Amalek did not, however, go into open warfare against Israel, but tried through craft what he dared not to attain in open warfare. Concealing their weapons in their garments, the Amalekites appeared in Israel's camp as if they meant to console them for Aaron's death, and then unexpectedly attacked them. Not content with this, the Amalekites disguised themselves in Canaanite costume and spoke with the speech of the latter, so that the Israelites might not be able to tell if they had before them Amalekites, as their personal appearance seemed to show, or Canaanites, as their dress and speech indicated. The reason for this disguise was that Amalek knew that Israel had inherited the legacy from their ancestor Isaac, that God always answered their prayer. Hence Amalek said, "If we now appear as Canaanites, they will implore God to send them aid against the Canaanites, and we shall slay them." But all these wiles of Amalek were to no avail. Israel couched their prayer to God in these words: "O Lord of the world, we know not with what nation we are now waging war, whether with Amalek or Canaan, but whatever nation it is, visit punishment on them." God heard their prayer and promised to stand by them, ordering them totally to annihilate their enemy, saying, "Although you are now dealing with Amalek, do not treat him like Esau's other sons, against whom you may not war, but try totally to destroy them, as if they were Canaanites." Israel acted according to this command, slaying the Amalekites in battle, and dedicating their cities to God. Amalek's only gain in this enterprise was that, at the beginning of the war, they seized a slave woman who had once belonged to them, but who later passed over to the possession of the Israelites. For Israel, this attack of Amalek had serious consequences, for as soon as they perceived the approach of the enemy, they were afraid to continue the march to Palestine, being no longer under the protection of the clouds that had vanished with Aaron's death. Hence, they decided to return to Egypt. They actually carried out part of this project by retreating 8 stations. But the Levites pursued them, and in Mosera there arose a bitter quarrel between those who wanted to return to Egypt and the Levites, who insisted on the continuance of the march to Palestine. Of the former, 8 tribal divisions were destroyed in this quarrel, 5 Benjamite and 1 each of the Simonite, Gadite, and Asherite divisions, while of the Levites 1 division was completely exterminated, and 3 others decimated in such a way that they did not recover until the days of David. The Levites were finally victorious, for even their opponents recognized the folly on their part to desire to return to Egypt, and that their loss had been a punishment, for they had not arranged a grieving ceremony adequate to honor a man of Aaron's piety. They then celebrated a grand ceremony for Aaron at Mosera, and it is for this reason that people later spoke of this place as the place where Aaron died, because the great grieving rites took place there. The brazen serpent. Owing to the king of Edom's refusal to permit Israel to pass through his land, they were obliged, at the very point when they believed themselves at the end of their march, to continue it, so as to go around the land of Edom. The people, weary of many years' marches, now became peevish, saying, "We have already been close to the promised land, and now must turn about once more? It was the same with our fathers, who, close to their goal, had to turn back and roam for 38 years. Is that how it will be with us?" In their dejection, they set about murmuring against God and Moses, master and servant being to them as one. They complained that they were entirely dependent on manna as a means of sustenance, The last mentioned complaint came from those in regard to whom God had vowed that they should never see the land which he had sworn to the patriarchs. These people could not bear the sight of the products of Palestine's soil, dying as soon as they saw them. Now that they had arrived at the outskirts of the Promised Land, the merchants brought into the camp of the Israelites the native products. But these, unable to partake of them, still had to continue to gather their sustenance exclusively from manna. Then a voice sounding from the heavens became audible on earth, making this announcement: "Come and behold, O you men, come and hear." The serpent heard the words, "Dust shall you eat," yet it complained not of its food. "But you, my people, that I led out of Egypt, for whom I caused manna to rain down from heaven, and quails to fly from the sea, and a spring to gush forth from the abyss, you murmur against me on account of manna, saying, 'Our soul hates this light bread.' Now let the serpents come, that complain not, even though whatever food they ate tasted only of dust, and let them bite those who murmur, even though they have a food that possesses every conceivable flavor. The serpent, which was the first creature to slander its maker, and was therefore punished, shall now punish this people, which, not profiting by the example of the serpent's punishment, and blasphemes its creator by declaring that the heavenly food he sends them would bring them death. The very serpents that during the 40 years' march had been burned by the cloud of glory, and lay heaped up high on the ground around the camp, these same serpents now bit the people so terribly that their poison burned the souls of those who they attacked. When Moses went to those who had been bitten, hearing that they were too ill to come to him, they, conscious of their guilt, said to him, "We have sinned, because we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us." Such was the meekness of Moses that he instantly forgave the people's transgression in regard to himself, and at once implored God's aid. God also, however, forgave their sin as soon as they had shown penitence, and so set an example to man likewise to grant forgiveness when it is requested. As a healing for those who had been bitten, God now told Moses to make a serpent of brass and put it on a pole, that it might come to pass that everyone who was bitten might look on it and live. Moses did as he was told. Then he hurled it up, and it remained floating in the air, so that all might be able to look at it. He made the serpent of brass because in Hebrew, Nahash signifies snake, and Nehoshet, brass. Hence Moses made the serpent of a substance that had a sound similar to that of the object fashioned out of it. It was not, however, the sight of the serpent of brass that brought with it healing and life. But whenever those who had been bitten by the serpents raised their eyes upward and subordinated their hearts to the will of the Heavenly Father, they were healed. If they gave no thought to God, they perished. Looking on the serpent of brass brought about healing not only to those who had been bitten by the serpents, but also to those who had been bitten by dogs or other animals. The cure of the latter was effected even more quickly than that of the former, for a casual glance sufficed for them, whereas the former were healed only after a long and insistent gaze. At Arnon. The murmurs of the people, on account of which God sent them the serpents, took place in Zalmonah, a place which grew only thorns and thistles. Then they wandered on to Punon, where God's punishment overtook them. In the following two stations also, Oboth and Iu Abarim, they continued their hostile actions against God, who for this reason was full of wrath against them, and did not look on them again with favor until they reached Arnon. God's favor was instantly shown during Israel's passage through the valley of Arnon, where he wrought for Israel miracles as great as those of yore, at the passing through the Red Sea. This valley was formed by two lofty mountains that lay so close together that people on the two summits of them could converse with one another. But in crossing from one mountain to the other, one had to cover a distance of 7 miles, having first to descend into the valley, and then again to ascend to the other mountain. The Amorites, knowing that Israel would now have to pass through the valley, assembled in multitudes. and a part of them hid in the caves, of which there were many on the slopes of the mountain, while the other part waited for Israel in the valley below, hoping to attack and destroy them unexpectedly from above and below. God, however, frustrated this plan, bringing it to pass that Israel did not descend into the valley at all, but stayed above, through the following miracle. Whereas the mountain on one side of the valley was full of caves, and the other consisted entirely of pointed rocks, God moved this rocky mountain so close to the other that the jutting mountains of the one entered the caves of the other, and all the Amorites that were concealed within them were crushed. It was the rocky mountain that moved, and not the other, for this same rocky mountain was the beginning of the promised land. And at the approach of Israel from the other mountain, which was Moabite, the land leaped to meet them, for it awaited them most longingly. An old proverb says, "If you give a piece of bread to a child, tell its mother about it." God, likewise, wanted Israel to know the great miracles he had accomplished for their sake, for they had no inkling of the attack the heathens had planned to make on them. God therefore told the well that had reappeared since their stay in Beeroth to wash out parts of the corpses in great numbers. When Israel turned to look on the well, they perceived it in the valley of Arnon, shining like the moon, and drawing corpses with it. Not until then did they discover the miracle that had been wrought. Not only did the mountains at first move together to let them pass, and then again move apart, but God saved them from great peril. They now intoned a song of praise to the well that had revealed to them the great miracle. When at the passage of the Red Sea, Israel wanted to sing a song of praise, Moses did not let them do it alone, but first sang to them the song they were to sing to the Lord. For then Israel was young, and could only repeat what its teacher Moses sang before them. But when the nation reached Arnon, it was fully grown, after its 40 years' march through the desert. Now the Israelites sang their own song, saying, "O Lord of the world, it behooves you to work miracles for us, whereas it is our duty to intone to you songs of praise." Moses had no part in the song of praise to the well, for the well had given occasion to his death in the desert, and no man can be expected to sing about his executioner. As Moses wanted nothing to do with this song, God demanded that his own name not be mentioned in it, acting in this instance like the king who was invited to a prince's table, but refused the invitation when he learned that his friend was not to be present at the feast. The song to the well was as follows: "This is the well that the patriarchs of the world, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, dug, and the princes of old times have searched for. The heads of the people, Moses and Aaron, made its water run with their staves. In the desert, Israel received it as a gift, and after they had received it, it followed Israel on all their wanderings, to lofty mountains and deep valleys. Not until they came to the boundary of Moab did it disappear, because Israel did not observe the words of the Torah." Israel sang a song to the well alone, and not to manna, because they had on several occasions railed against the heavenly food, and therefore God said, "I do not wish you to find fault with manna," and he would not permit them to sing a song of praise to manna. Next, Sihon, the king of the Amorites. End part 65 of 95, thelegensofthejews.com.